April 2025 is undoubtedly considered one of the wildest months in stock market history. But unlike other swings in the past, this one was induced by one person, US President Donald Trump. Now, love him or hate him, the reality is that his policies, and more importantly, the way he handled his policies, is the reason that the S&P 500 dropped almost 11% in just 3 trading days, followed by a full recovery, and the craziest part is all of this happened in the month of April. During this crazy market, there were some notable records that took place. The largest single-day point increase for both the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the second largest percentage increase in the Nasdaq's history. Because the majority of key events happened in just a span of 6 trading days, it's important to understand what these events were and what caused the market to react so abruptly. When we better understand what the chain of events are, we can then use that information to gauge our portfolio construction in the future. So, it's April 2nd. Trump announces his sweeping new tariff policies after the market close. Most people don't realize this, but after the market closed on April 2nd, those who were watching after hours trading closely noticed that when Trump initially announced the tariff plan across the board, markets actually went up on the news. It's only after Trump showed the big board in the Rose Garden with all the reciprocal tariff rates that the market started to sell off precipitously. The reason that the market sold off so hard was because those rates that Trump showed in the Rose Garden were significantly higher than any analyst had predicted. It took 3 days for the S&P 500 to go down a whopping 11%. The reason is because the market thought that Trump at some point would relent on this tariff policy. In the middle of the 3rd day of stock market selling, April 7th, the US bond market started to crash. Now, this was a lot more alarming than a simple stock market crash, and the reason is that the US bond market is the safe haven asset of the planet, meaning that whenever there is a stock market sell-off or any economic uncertainty, investors in the US and around the world flock into US government bonds for safety. When the US bond market starts to go lower, along with a stock market crash, that signals some deep foundational issues in US economic and political policy. On the 5th day following these events, on April 9th, the US bond market had declined 9% in just 2.5 trading days. Seeing a low-risk investment decline by 9% in just 2 days is simply unprecedented. Stock market selling coupled with the crash of the US bond market prompted Trump to finally blink. Midday on April 9th, Trump pushed the pause button on the tariffs, and we saw a market move that we have never seen in history. As soon as Trump announced a tariff pause, the S&P 500 rallied a whopping 500 points in a single afternoon. 500 points in the S&P 500 equates to around a 10% move, which is equivalent to an average annual move in the stock market happening in just 3 hours. So, okay, we got the timeline down, but now that we know the story, it's a cool story, but what can we take away from it? Number 1, Trump does respond to headlines. There was an idea that was being floated around during the midst of this crash that Donald Trump was ideologically tied to tariffs and there was simply nothing that the market would do that would make him relent. That was simply not the case and was evidenced by the fact that Trump did push the pause button in the middle of this chaos. The fact that Trump responds to headlines, especially negative headlines, is important to know when setting up your portfolio for the rest of his presidency. If you see a policy announced and it's not good for markets, there is a very good chance that that policy will either be reversed or temporarily halted in order to make way for some breathing room for financial assets. Number 2, the bond market is what made Trump blink, not the stock market. If you follow the timeline of events closely, the reason Trump pushed the pause button was because of carnage that was happening in the bond market, and he himself said as such.
The bond market is very tricky. I was watching it. Yeah, I saw last night where people were getting a little queasy. I think everything had, the big move wasn't what I did today. The big move was what I did on Liberation Day.
This is important to know because it shows that Trump cares more about preserving the US's ability to borrow money than he does about any specific policy that he's making. When the bond market starts to crumble, interest rates and borrowing costs go up, and there is actually nothing that even the Federal Reserve can do about it. Number 3, His original advisors that were pushing the high tariff rates on the onset of Liberation Day have seemingly gone into the shadows since Trump pushed the pause button. This suggests that not everyone in his administration was on board with the original plan, and you see this corroborated by the fact that new members of his administration are starting to take a more active role in the public sphere. The reason this is important is because we can expect that this pause is more so a restructuring of the whole plan itself and not just a literal pause. If you're setting up your portfolio over the next few months, this can really help you understand that although there may be some additional volatility that comes in when the tariff pause is set to expire, I think we can reasonably expect that the amount of volatility will not be nearly as high as we just saw in April. And the last thing is, keep an eye on the bond market. If Trump blinked when the bond market started to go down, that means that he would do it again if the same thing happened. If the bond market starts to go, you can expect to hear something coming out of the White House in order to reverse the damage. As the situation progresses, we'll keep you updated on what we see happening in the markets. But until then, please like, subscribe, and comment on this video if you want to see more. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Anton Kulikov, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.